You're uneducated trash! Get out of my house!
Even C card.
Jetty.
Uneducated trash.
Respect isn't bought. You're a lowlife with luck.
Real careers have degrees!
Respect is earned and you lost the account the day you lied about me.
My name is Chloe, and at 32 years old, I'm the founder of a $20 million company I built from scratch. For years, I secretly supported my entire family with that money. So last month, at my dad's 65th birthday dinner, that should have been a moment of celebration. But instead, as I sat at the table surrounded by everyone I loved, my own father looked me dead in the eye and called me uneducated trash. Just like that. Uneducated trash. The words hit me harder than a physical blow, leaving me completely shattered in front of everyone. What he didn't know was just how successful his trash daughter had become. But the look on his face, 3 weeks later, that was worth every single tear. If you've ever felt completely underestimated by the people who should believe in you most, let me know where you're watching from. And make sure you like and subscribe, because you're going to want to see this. After my father's final word, dropout, I left with only $2,000 from my various side hustles. And those first months, they were brutal. I rented a tiny studio apartment in a questionable part of Denver, the kind of place where the laundry room door never quite locks, and you learn to ignore noises after dark. My diet consisted of ramen noodles and whatever was on deep discount at the grocery store. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by cheap coffee and a desperate fear of failure, trying to build my e-commerce platform from the ground up. My first 3 business attempts were complete disasters. Utter failures. I lost money on a drop shipping venture when my suppliers in China sent defective products, and I had to refund angry customers out of my own pocket. My social media management service collapsed when I underpriced my work so badly that I burned out, trying to be everything to everyone for almost no profit. My attempt at creating handmade jewelry, that was a humbling experience. I simply couldn't scale it beyond the occasional sale at a local weekend market. But here's the thing, they don't teach you in a college classroom. Every failure was a masterclass. Every dollar I lost taught me a lesson worth 10,000. I learned about supply chain management the hard way, by dealing with customs and angry emails. I discovered the critical importance of ironclad client contracts after being burned by someone who refused to pay. I understood the limits of scalability by hitting them head-on. These weren't theories in a textbook. They were scars. The turning point came when I met Eleanor at a local business networking event. She was 20 years my senior, with a sharp suit and an even sharper mind. She had built and sold 2 tech companies and had an aura of quiet confidence that I'd never seen before. She saw something in me that my own family never did. A hunger, a resilience. She became the mentor I desperately needed, teaching me practical wisdom without a hint of judgment about my lack of a degree. Over coffee one afternoon, she told me something I'll never forget. Education comes in many forms, Chloe, she said. Some of the most successful people I know learned by doing, not by sitting in classrooms. With her guidance, I refined my business model. At age 22, I launched True North Goods. The idea was simple but powerful. An e-commerce platform that connected small, independent American manufacturers with customers who were tired of mass-produced junk and wanted to support local businesses. The timing was perfect. We rode the wave of a growing movement to buy American and support artisans. Those early days required immense sacrifice. I converted half of my tiny apartment into a makeshift office. My futon doubled as my couch and my bed. My desktop computer and printer took up most of the living space. I worked from 5 in the morning until well past 11 at night, handling everything myself. Website coding, customer service calls, marketing, packing, everything. The breakthrough came 8 months in. A popular lifestyle blogger featured one of our artisan partners, a woodworker from Oregon. Orders flooded in, completely overwhelming our basic systems. I remember working for 72 hours straight, just fulfilling orders and desperately working with a freelance developer to upgrade our website infrastructure. That single feature brought in $10,000 in revenue, more money than I had ever seen in my bank account at one time. I called my parents, my voice shaking with excitement, to share the news. My father's response was a bucket of cold water. "That's nice, honey," he said, his voice laced with cautious skepticism. "But it's probably just temporary. You know, you can always go back to college when this thing runs its course." His words stung, but they also forged my determination into steel. I would prove him wrong. Not with arguments, but with undeniable, overwhelming success. The next 5 years were a relentless blur of growth. True North Goods exploded. We started with just 27 partners. By year 3, we represented over 400 manufacturers across all 50 states. Crossing $1 million in annual revenue was a moment I celebrated alone, with a single glass of champagne in my office after everyone had gone home. I expanded into a full floor of a downtown office building. I hired 38 full-time employees with good salaries and benefits. And then, after a profile in Business Insider, the investors came calling. Our valuation hit $20 million. $20 million. And through it all, my family had no idea. They knew I had my little website business that was doing okay. I let them believe that, because a part of me was afraid of what would happen if they knew the truth. Despite their lukewarm support, I couldn't stop myself from helping them. When my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer during year 4 of my business, I anonymously paid the $80,000 in medical expenses that their insurance wouldn't cover. My dad mentioned some insurance settlement that had saved them, never once suspecting it was me. When my brother Mark needed a down payment for his first house, his bank account was $50,000 short. I created a separate account and funneled the money to him, making it look like a loan from a distant uncle. He took the money readily, while still making condescending comments about me needing a real job with benefits. And when my sister Jessica's dream wedding was in jeopardy after her fiancé lost his job, I covered the $50,000 shortfall for the venue and catering. She knew the money came from me, but at family gatherings, she'd refer to it as a lucky break from my little website having a good year. In total, I had secretly given them over $250,000. Every dollar. Every single dollar was a testament to my hard work. A secret weapon they knew nothing about, forged in ramen-fueled nights and fueled by their own disbelief. They still saw the college dropout, the girl with the hobby. They had no idea they were talking to a multimillionaire, and that ignorance, that was about to become their biggest mistake. As my father's 65th birthday approached, I made a decision. It was time. It was time to be honest about my success. Not to boast, but to finally break through the wall of misconceptions they had built around me. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally gain the respect I had been quietly seeking for over a decade. I wrestled with the idea for weeks. Was this the right move? Would it just make things worse? But the disconnect between my reality and their perception had become a painful, gaping chasm I couldn't ignore anymore. By day, I led strategy meetings for a multi-million-dollar company. By night, I fielded texts from family members who still treated me like the college dropout who stumbled into a bit of internet luck. The hypocrisy was exhausting. So, I bought him a substantial gift, a fully funded retirement investment account, enough to ensure my parents would live their golden years in complete comfort and security. I planned to present it along with the truth about my business at his birthday dinner. The night before, I rehearsed what I would say, standing in front of my hotel room mirror, I wasn't the uncertain 19-year-old begging for approval anymore. I was a successful entrepreneur. I had created opportunities for hundreds of American manufacturers and dozens of employees. Surely that had to count for something. Surely that would finally earn my father's respect. I couldn't have been more wrong. The evening of the dinner, I started to feel a knot tightening in my stomach. The house looked exactly as it had throughout my childhood, frozen in time, with the same furniture and the same family photos lining the walls. The only new addition was a massive flat-screen TV that my brother had bought them last Christmas, displayed prominently like a trophy symbolizing his financial contribution. My mother greeted me with her usual restrained affection, a quick, almost formal hug, and a pat on the back. "You look nice, Chloe," she said, her eyes scanning me briefly. "Did you cut your hair?" It was the same haircut I'd had for 3 years. Mark arrived with his wife, both dressed in crisp business casual attire that subtly screamed their upper-middle-class status. Then came my sister Jessica and her husband, Kevin. Jessica immediately launched into a story about her recent promotion at the accounting firm where she had followed in our father's footsteps. "The partners are already hinting I might make junior partner next year," she announced proudly, youngest in firm history. Throughout the entire pre-dinner conversation, my career didn't get a single mention. Not one question. When Kevin briefly mentioned seeing an article about e-commerce growth, my brother Mark quickly steered the conversation toward his son's Little League team. It was a masterclass in passive dismissal. I felt like a ghost at the table, present in body but completely invisible in their world. Dinner was my mother's traditional pot roast, served on the good china reserved for special occasions. My father sat at the head of the table, basking in the glow of his family's admiration. The moment finally felt right as dessert was served. I had waited patiently through endless discussions of neighborhood gossip, my nephew's baseball stats, and Jessica's upcoming vacation plans. No one had asked me a single thing about my life or my work. "Dad, Mom, everyone," I began, my heart hammering against my ribs despite my outward calm. "I wanted to share some news about my company." My father nodded absently, already reaching for a second slice of his birthday cake. "True North Goods was recently valued at $20 million, I said, my voice clear and steady. "We've received several acquisition offers, and I was featured in Business Insider and Entrepreneur magazine last month." The silence that followed was deafening. It was so total, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. My mother froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Jessica and Kevin exchanged a quick, unreadable glance. Mark just stared, his mouth slightly agape. My father was the first to speak, his tone dripping with dismissal. "And what exactly does that mean, Chloe?" he asked, waving his fork dismissively. "These internet businesses use all sorts of funny math to come up with those valuations." I kept my composure, explaining in simple terms how business valuations work, our revenue streams, and our growth trajectory. I mentioned the office with 38 employees and the partnerships with over 400 American manufacturers. But before I could finish, Mark interrupted, a smug look on his face. "So, you got lucky with this online thing," he said, emphasizing the word lucky. "That's great. But some of us have been building real careers with actual qualifications." He glanced at his wife, who nodded in dutiful agreement. "It's not luck, Mark," I responded, my voice dangerously calm. "It's 7 years of working 18-hour days, solving complex problems and building something meaningful. We've helped save dozens of American manufacturing businesses that were on the verge of closing." My mother finally spoke, her voice tentative. "That sounds impressive, dear. Though I still wish you had finished your degree. Even with this business, education is important." My patience was wearing thin, but I pressed on. "Actually," I said, turning back to my father, I brought something for you. I handed him the envelope, the one containing the documentation for the retirement account I had funded. I wanted to make sure you both have a comfortable retirement. My father opened the envelope. His expression darkened as he scanned the papers. And then, something shifted. It wasn't confusion or gratitude, it was anger. Raw, unfiltered anger. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked, his voice low and menacing. He dropped the papers on the table as if they were contaminated. "Some kind of charity? We didn't raise you to throw money around like you're better than everyone." "That's not my intention at all," I tried to explain, my voice faltering for the first time. "I just wanted to help, the same way I helped with Mom's medical bills, and Mark's down payment, and Jessica's wedding." 3 heads snapped up in unison. My secret was out. And in that moment, I knew I had made a catastrophic mistake. "You," my father sputtered, his face turning a deep shade of red. "That was all you?" Jessica looked horrified. Mark's expression hardened into something ugly. My mother just looked lost. "You've been secretly paying for things behind our backs?" My father's voice rose with each word. "Playing the big shot with your internet money?" "I was just trying to help," I whispered, my voice smaller than I intended. "I never wanted recognition. I just wanted to support the family." "Support?" Mark interjected, his voice dripping with venom. "By making us feel like charity cases? Some of us work honest jobs with actual degrees. We don't get rich quick with online schemes." "It is not a scheme," I insisted, feeling the room begin to spin. "I built a legitimate business that helps people." But my father was already standing up, his chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. His napkin fell to the ground, unnoticed. "You dropped out of college against our advice, disappear into your little internet world, and now you come back here, throwing money around like you have all the answers." "That's not what I'm doing," I protested, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You think your money makes you successful?" he continued, his voice now a full-throated roar that echoed through the house. He took a step towards me, his finger jabbing the air. "You're still just uneducated trash who got lucky. Anyone can get lucky." Uneducated trash. The 2 words hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. My mother gasped softly but said nothing. She did nothing. Mark looked down at his plate, but I could see a slight triumphant smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Jessica looked torn between embarrassment and agreement. "William," my mother finally whispered, but it was too little, too late. "No," my father raged on, now completely consumed by his anger. "I have worked my entire life the right way. I got an education, built a respectable career, and raised a family. I will not be shown up in my own home by my dropout daughter." Slowly, I stood up, gathering my purse. My hands were shaking. "I should go." "Yes, you should," my father spat, his eyes filled with a contempt I had never seen before. "Get out of my house, you lowlife. Your money doesn't make you part of this family. We have standards." The words hit me like physical blows. I looked at each face around the table, searching, pleading for any ally, any sign of support. There was none. Just coldness and judgment. And that's when I realized, after all the years of sacrifice, that my own family had just disowned me in the cruelest way possible. I'm at a loss for words to describe how that felt. If you're feeling as outraged as I am right now, do me a favor. Comment with just one word that describes this family's actions. But instead of breaking me, that outrage turned into a cold, hard strength I never knew I had. I don't remember the drive back to the hotel. It was a blur of streetlights and tears. I had to pull over twice when the emotion became so overwhelming that I couldn't see the road. The cruel irony was crushing me. I owned a multi-million-dollar company, yet I was spending the night in a generic hotel room in my own hometown because the door to my family's house was no longer open to me. Back in the sterile quiet of the room, I didn't cry anymore. The tears had run out. All that was left was a hollow, echoing silence. I replayed the evening's events over and over, analyzing each word, each reaction, each look of contempt. Had I been too proud? Had I misread the situation so completely? For years, all the financial help I'd provided, it now felt like a foolish, desperate attempt to buy the approval I could never earn through my achievements alone. Something inside me snapped. The grief and the hurt didn't disappear, but they crystallized. They transformed from a hot, messy pain into something cold, sharp, and focused. A cold realization washed over me, as clear and chilling as a winter morning. They will never change. It wasn't about a misunderstanding. It wasn't about me being insensitive. It was about who they were and who I was. And those two things could no longer coexist. It was over. Enough was enough. There would not be a next time. I walked over to the desk, opened my laptop, and created a new spreadsheet. The title was simple: Family Expenses. I started documenting every single cent I had given my family over the years, digging through old bank statements and credit card bills on my phone. This wasn't an act of regret. It was an act of accounting, an act of gathering evidence for a trial that would only happen in my own mind. The list grew, and with each line item, the coldness inside me solidified. $75,000 for my mother's cancer treatment, paid directly to the hospital and specialists. $120,000 for my brother's house, covering not just the down payment but additional renovations he had conveniently needed a few months later. $50,000 for my sister's wedding, which included the venue, the catering, and the honeymoon to Italy she never knew I funded. And the smaller things, the things I had almost forgotten. $2,200 for my father's car repair last winter. $3,500 for my mother's kitchen renovation. Christmas gifts, birthday presents, emergency expenses, all of it, quietly handled through accounts designed to obscure their source. The total came to nearly $300,000. Not counting the retirement account my father had just thrown back in my face. $300,000, given freely, out of a love for a family that had just called me trash. Seeing the number in black and white didn't make me sad. It made me angry. A clean, clarifying anger. My phone lit up around midnight. It was a text from Jessica. "Dad is still upset, but he'll get over it. You know how he gets when his authority is challenged." No apology. No acknowledgement of the horrific things that had been said. Just an excuse for his behavior, and an unspoken expectation that I would be the one to absorb the abuse and come back, tail between my legs, to restore the family dynamic. As if nothing had happened. I stared at the message, the sheer audacity of it taking my breath away. I deleted it without responding. The next morning, I made my first strategic move. I contacted a therapist in the city where I lived, not the one in my hometown. I needed an outside perspective, someone with no ties to my past. Dr. Richardson agreed to an emergency virtual session that afternoon. I recounted the dinner in a flat, emotionless voice. "Family wounds cut deepest," she observed gently, "especially when they target the very things we've worked hardest to overcome." Over the next few days, she helped me understand the toxic dynamics at play. My success hadn't just puzzled my family, it had threatened them. It challenged the hierarchy, the values my parents had built their entire lives around. My financial assistance, rather than earning gratitude, had created deep-seated resentment by highlighting a power shift they were not prepared to accept. "Your father's identity is built around being the provider and the authority," she explained. "Your success challenges both of those roles on a fundamental level." It was a revelation. I began a journaling practice, documenting not just the dinner, but patterns throughout my childhood. the subtle ways my entrepreneurial spirit had been discouraged. The times my brother's C+ on a report card was celebrated, while my business successes were minimized. The constant underlying message, without a degree, you will never truly be one of us. This process revealed how deeply I had internalized their judgment. Despite all my outward success, a part of me still felt like the family failure, the dropout who always had something to prove. This explained everything: my reluctance to be open about my achievements, my continuous, unrecognized financial support. I was still that little girl, desperately trying to earn a gold star from a teacher who had already decided to fail me. And just when I thought the betrayal couldn't possibly cut any deeper, my phone rang. It was Jessica. I stared at her name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Against my better judgment, a stupid, foolish part of me, the part that still wanted a sister, answered the call. Maybe, just maybe, this was it. The apology. The moment of clarity. Chloe? Her voice came through, completely devoid of any remorse. It was cheerful, almost businesslike. Listen, I know things were a little tense the other night, but you really put Dad in an awkward position. I remained silent, the blood draining from my face. Awkward position? That's what she called it? Anyway, she continued, completely oblivious to my silence. The reason I'm calling is about the wedding photographer. He keeps bugging me about finalizing the album, and there's a final payment due. I told him you were handling all the vendor payments, so he said he'd be in touch. Since you paid for most of it already, can you just go ahead and settle up with him? It's only about $1,500. Just take care of it, okay? The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. I felt the air leave my lungs. I had just been verbally abused, disowned, and kicked out of my childhood home like a stray dog. I had been called the most vile names imaginable by our father. And here she was, less than 24 hours later, calling not to apologize, not to see if I was okay, but to ask for more money, to demand that I continue to perform my function as the family ATM. The shamelessness of it, the cold, transactional nature of the request was more brutal than my father's rage. It was a confirmation, a final, undeniable confirmation of what I truly was to them. Not a daughter, not a sister, a resource, a tool to be used. No, I said. The word was quiet, but it felt like a thunderclap in my own ears. What? But you. You handle it, I said, my voice as cold as ice, and I hung up. I blocked her number immediately. Then I blocked my brother's, and my mother's, and my father's, one by one. It was a purge. That was the final straw. The last thread of hope I had been clinging to didn't just break, it evaporated. The cold realization I'd had in the hotel room now had a plan of action. I picked up the phone and made another call, this one to my executive assistant, Sarah. Sarah, I said, my voice steady and clear, I need you to do something for me. Find me the best moving company in Denver. I want all of my personal belongings from my apartment packed up and shipped to a storage unit in Naples, Florida. Everything. As for the furniture, the clothes, everything else, donate it. Donate it all to a local charity. I want a fresh start. Florida? She asked, surprised but professional. Florida, I confirmed. And one more thing, book me a one-way ticket. Before leaving, I sat down and wrote a letter to my parents. It wasn't an angry tirade. It wasn't a plea for understanding. It was a statement of fact, a resignation. Dear Mom and Dad, I wrote, I have spent years seeking your approval and respect. I have supported our family financially while downplaying my own success to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. When Dad called me uneducated trash and a lowlife, it revealed how you truly see me. No amount of success will ever change that perception. I cannot continue to participate in a relationship where my worth is measured by credentials I don't have, rather than by my character and my achievements. I will always love you both, but I need to create distance for my own well-being. I hope someday you can understand. I sealed the letter and mailed it myself. No return address. The days that followed were a blur of logistics. My company could be run remotely. The leadership team I had built was more than capable. As I boarded the plane to Florida, a complex mixture of grief and freedom washed over me. The family I had tried so desperately to please was now behind me. But so was the crushing burden of seeking an approval I would never, ever receive. I was finally free. And I was about to find out just how far my father was willing to go to prove he was right about me all along. Naples, Florida, greeted me with warm sunshine and salt-scented air. It was a world away from the gray, landlocked winter I had left behind in Denver. My beach house stood on a quiet stretch of shoreline, a modern two-story structure with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Gulf of Mexico. I had purchased it as an investment property the year before, only visiting twice for brief vacations. Now it was supposed to be my sanctuary, my home. But arriving there alone, the place felt impersonal and sterile, like an upscale hotel. The real estate agent had furnished it with standard luxury vacation decor. Attractive, but completely soulless. So, making this house truly mine became a form of therapy. A way to reclaim my identity. I started with the bedroom, replacing the generic beige bedding with handcrafted quilts from one of my true North Goods artisans in North Carolina. The mass-produced art came down, replaced with original pieces from emerging American artists I had discovered through my business. Every morning, I woke to the sound of waves and the sight of authentic creativity surrounding me. It was a physical reminder of what I had built. Establishing new routines became essential to my healing. I started each day with a sunrise walk along the beach, my feet in the cool sand, collecting shells and watching dolphins arc through the waves offshore. I found a local coffee shop run by a Cuban-American family where I became a regular, greeted by name rather than by order number. For the first time in my life, I was building a community from scratch. A community of my own choosing. Running the business remotely proved easier than I had anticipated. Our established systems functioned smoothly, and video conferences replaced in-person meetings. Without the daily commute and office distractions, I found myself more productive, making clearer, more confident decisions from my peaceful new headquarters. The undercurrent of seeking my family's approval had been a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety in the background of my life. And now that it was gone, the silence was clarifying. I trusted my own judgment without the shadow of my father's criticism hanging over every choice. To fully establish true North Goods in Florida, I needed to set up new business banking relationships. My corporate lawyer in Naples recommended a prestigious private bank known for handling high-net-worth entrepreneurs. The initial meetings went exceptionally well. They were impressed with my company's financials, our growth trajectory, and our business model. Everything was proceeding smoothly. As a final step in their due diligence process, they needed to contact my previous business bank in Denver for a standard reference check. It was a formality, a box to be ticked. I confidently provided the contact information for a senior vice president there, a man named Mr. Peterson. I knew him professionally, and I was also aware that he moved in some of the same social circles as my father. At the time, I actually thought that might be a good thing. A subtle, professional link back to my hometown. Another mistake. Another catastrophic miscalculation on my part. A week later, I received a call from my new relationship manager at the Naples Bank, a sharp guy named David. I expected it to be the final confirmation that our accounts were ready. But instead of his usual upbeat tone, his voice was hesitant, guarded. "Hi, Chloe," he began. We have a slight issue with the reference check from Denver." My stomach dropped. An issue? What kind of issue? My company's credit was impeccable. What's the problem? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Well, he stammered, clearly uncomfortable. We spoke with Mr. Peterson at Denver National Bank. He confirmed all the financial details. Everything is perfect. But he mentioned that he had a casual conversation with your father, Frank, at a recent Rotary Club function. He said your father knew you were relocating the business. A cold dread started to creep up my spine. Okay, I said slowly, not understanding where this was going. David took a deep breath. Well, Chloe, it seems your father expressed some concerns. Concerns? The word hung in the air between us. What kind of concerns? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. According to Mr. Peterson, David said, now reading from his notes, your father described True North Goods as a fortunate venture and a dot-com bubble that could pop at any moment. He also mentioned that he was worried about your lack of a formal business education and advised that anyone entering into a financial partnership with you should proceed with extreme caution. I went completely silent. I couldn't breathe. The phone felt like a block of ice pressed against my ear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a father's clumsy concern. This was sabotage. This was a deliberate, calculated act of betrayal designed to destroy my professional reputation. My own father, the man whose medical bills I had paid, whose family I had supported, had gone behind my back and actively tried to poison a critical business relationship. He had used his own credibility in the community to paint me as an unqualified, lucky amateur, a fraud. He wasn't just angry that I was successful. He was actively trying to make me fail, to prove that he had been right about me all along. The rage that had been simmering inside me since his birthday dinner erupted into a white-hot inferno. But it was a silent inferno. It didn't make me want to scream. It made me want to act. This wasn't an emotional outburst in the heat of an argument. This was a cold, calculated assassination attempt on my career. He hadn't just called me trash. He had tried to convince the world that I was trash too. This was not the act of a father. It was the act of an enemy. David, I said finally, my voice shockingly calm and clear. It didn't even sound like my own. I understand your bank's position. Please give me 24 hours. I will forward you our complete audited financials from the past 5 years, our projections for the next 3, letters of recommendation from our top 10 manufacturing partners, and a personal reference from Eleanor Vance, the founder of Vance Technologies. I think that should clear up any concerns your institution might have. The confidence in my voice seemed to reassure him. Of course, Chloe, he said, his tone shifting back to professional respect. That would be more than sufficient. After I hung up the phone, I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, on my beautiful oceanfront deck, staring out at the turquoise water. The sun was warm on my skin, but I felt nothing but ice in my veins. The fragile hope I might have harbored for some future reconciliation, some distant understanding with my father, it was gone. He had burned that bridge to the ground. He had salted the earth. And in doing so, he had given me the one thing I didn't know I needed. Permission. Permission to stop holding back. Permission to stop protecting him from the consequences of his own actions. Permission to finally, truly cut the cord. My financial success was no longer just a source of private satisfaction. It was now my shield. And my sword. My father had tried to use his respectable career and his education as weapons against me. He had no idea that I was about to walk into that fight with a nuclear arsenal. The game had changed, and he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had underestimated his uneducated trash daughter one last time, and I was about to show him, and the rest of my family, exactly what I was made of. After securing my banking relationship in Naples, I focused on building my new life. I joined the local Chamber of Commerce and a businesswomen's networking group. Unlike in Denver, where I had constantly downplayed my success, here I was open about my company and my achievements. The respect I received was immediate and genuine, unburdened by the baggage of who I used to be. I befriended Eliza, the owner of a local art gallery, who introduced me to her circle of friends. These were accomplished, intelligent women in their 30s and 40s who valued each other for their present accomplishments, not their past credentials. Our weekly dinner gatherings became a highlight, filled with laughter and conversations that never once included questions about my education or suggestions that I had merely gotten lucky. For the first time, I felt seen for who I actually was. Then came the development that would bring my family story full circle in a way I never anticipated. The Naples Business Journal was not a publication I normally read, but Eliza texted me early one morning, insisting I pick up a copy. Page 3, the text read, "You're going to want to see this." And there it was, a feature article, profiling local business owners making an impact beyond Florida. There I was, in a photograph taken on my deck with the Gulf of Mexico sparkling behind me, under the headline, "E-commerce innovator brings multi-million-dollar business to Naples." The journalist had done her research. She detailed True North Goods' growth from a bootstrapped startup to a $20 million valuation. She wrote about our impact on American manufacturing and even mentioned the Entrepreneurship Scholarship Foundation I was in the process of setting up. The article painted a picture of success far more comprehensive and undeniable than anything that had ever appeared in my hometown media. I hadn't authorized the story, but as Eliza explained, it was all a matter of public record. Property transfers, business registrations. Once they knew I was here, the rest was easy for a good reporter to piece together. I thought little more about it until the following week, when my phone began lighting up with social media notifications. The article had been picked up by several larger business publications, then shared extensively through LinkedIn and Facebook. Former high school classmates suddenly remembered our friendship. Teachers I hadn't heard from in 15 years sent messages claiming they had always seen my potential. Most surprisingly, the local newspaper in Denver ran a condensed version of the article with an added, irresistible angle. Local entrepreneur makes national impact. The irony was so thick I could taste it. The same community that had subtly reinforced my parents' disappointment now celebrated me as a hometown success story. And through this ripple effect of publicity, my family inevitably discovered the full, undeniable extent of my success. The first sign was the unannounced arrival of my brother. 3 weeks after I had settled into my new home, my doorbell rang on a Saturday afternoon. I looked through the peephole, and my heart sank. It was Mark. He stood on my doorstep, looking out of place in his button-down shirt and pressed khakis amidst my casual coastal decor. "Nice place," he said, whistling as he surveyed the ocean view from my living room after I reluctantly let him in. "Really nice." His appearance was a jarring intrusion into my newfound sanctuary. "What brings you to Florida, Mark?" I asked, my voice polite but firm. I didn't offer him a drink. I didn't offer him a seat. "Family?" he replied with that same confident, charming smile he had used to win over our parents since childhood. "And," he added, getting straight to the point, "I could use some advice about an investment opportunity. Possibly a loan to get in on the ground floor." Some patterns are just too predictable to be surprising. Without our parents there as an audience, his usual pretense of moral superiority dropped away instantly. This was a financial visit, nothing more. He had seen the articles, he had seen the $20 million number, and he had come to collect his share. "I'm not making any more loans to family members, Mark," I said calmly. The words felt solid, real. "That chapter is closed." His charming smile vanished. His expression hardened into the familiar look of entitled resentment I knew so well. "So that's how it is," he sneered. "You move to your beach mansion and forget where you came from. Dad was right about you. You really are something else." The accusation coming from him was almost laughable. "Dad called me uneducated trash and kicked me out of his house," I reminded him, my voice still even. "He then tried to sabotage my business by telling my bank I was an unqualified risk. Is that what you came all the way to Florida to reinforce?" He backpedaled quickly, realizing he had lost all leverage. "He didn't mean it like that," he stammered, falling back on the family's classic excuse. "You know how he gets. Family fights happen. We just need to move past this." "That wasn't a fight, Mark," I replied, walking towards the door. "It was a revelation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans this afternoon." After showing him out, I sat on my deck, watching the waves roll in, surprisingly unshaken by the encounter. The boundaries I was building felt strong. They felt right. The desperation and panic were all on his side now, not mine. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The real onslaught began the next day. The shock and disbelief had worn off, replaced by frantic, panicked attempts to regain control. The first sign came as a friend request on social media from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in a decade, followed by several other extended family members who had previously shown zero interest in my life. Then came the text from my mother. "Saw the article about your company. Very impressive, dear. Dad and I are so proud." So proud. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. There was no mention of the cruel words, no acknowledgement of the birthday dinner, no apology for my father's attempt to ruin me. Just a casual, retroactive claim of pride that had been poisonously absent when I sat at their dinner table. I didn't respond. My father's voicemail arrived the next day. His tone was artificially jovial, the voice of a man trying desperately to pretend nothing was wrong. "Amanda," he began, a forced cheerfulness in his voice. "Big news about your company in the paper. Always knew you had it in you. Listen, there seems to have been a misunderstanding last time we spoke. Things got a little heated. Call me back when you can. We need to talk." A misunderstanding. That was his chosen narrative. That was how he was characterizing, calling his own daughter uneducated trash, ordering her out of his house, and then trying to sabotage her livelihood. It wasn't a betrayal. It was just a simple misunderstanding. The panic escalated 3 days later when my mother texted again. This was the message that laid their true motives bare. "We are thinking of visiting Florida next month. Would love to see your new place. Let us know if that would work for you." The message landed like a stone in my stomach. 6 weeks of healing, of building a new life free from their judgment, and now they wanted to simply appear on my doorstep, as if nothing had happened. They weren't coming to apologize. They were coming to re-establish contact, to reinsert themselves into the life of their newly famous, newly wealthy daughter. They were coming because my public success had made disowning me socially awkward and financially inconvenient. The barrage of calls and texts became relentless. When I didn't respond, their tone shifted from fake pride to emotional manipulation. My mother sent long, rambling texts about how I was tearing the family apart. My father left another voicemail, this time his voice tight with anger, accusing me of being ungrateful and disrespectful for not returning his calls. They tried to use guilt, the same tool they had used to control me my entire life. "How can you do this to your family?" one of my mother's texts read. "After everything we've done for you?" But their tactics no longer worked. The spell was broken. Their words, once capable of shattering my self-worth, now felt hollow and transparent. They weren't concerned about the family. They were terrified of losing their power, of losing the comfortable world they had built on a foundation of my silent sacrifice. Their panic wasn't about love, it was about control. And for the first time in my life, I was the one holding all the cards. The barrage of panicked messages continued for days, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, I felt a strange sense of calm. Their desperation was a confirmation that I had made the right choice. I scheduled another emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Richardson. I read her the texts and relayed the voicemail from my father. "You have several options," she advised, her voice a steady anchor in my emotional storm. "You can decline their visit entirely, which is a perfectly valid boundary. You can agree to see them, but set strict conditions about what you will and will not discuss. Or," she paused, "you can see this as an opportunity for an honest conversation that might lead to some form of healing, though that requires their willingness to acknowledge the harm they've done." After careful consideration, I knew what I had to do. Ignoring them would only prolong the drama. I needed to face them, but this time it would be on my terms, my turf, my rules. I unblocked my mother's number and sent a single, carefully worded text. "You and Dad are welcome to visit, but we need to have an honest conversation about what happened at his birthday dinner before we can move forward. Please let me know if you are open to that kind of discussion." Her response came back almost instantly. "Of course, dear, we just want to put this all behind us and be a family again." The phrasing troubled me. That desire to just put this behind us without actually addressing it. It was their classic move: sweep the conflict under the rug and pretend it never happened. But this time, the rug was gone. I confirmed dates for their visit the following month. As the day approached, I prepared for it like a business negotiation. I arranged for them to stay in a nearby hotel, not in my home. My house was my sanctuary, and they were not welcome in it yet. I role-played difficult conversations with Dr. Richardson, practicing how to set boundaries without becoming defensive, how to state facts without getting pulled into an emotional argument. I decided to meet them at a beachfront restaurant for lunch, a neutral, public setting that would naturally moderate the initial interaction. They arrived looking smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had been in Denver. My father's confident posture seemed diminished. My mother looked nervous, constantly fidgeting with her purse. They were both dressed formally, despite the casual coastal setting. My father in a button-down shirt and slacks. My mother in a structured dress better suited to a church service than beachside dining. They were out of their element. Good. "This place is something else," my father said, gesturing awkwardly at the turquoise water. "You've done well for yourself, Chloe." The slight emphasis on "for yourself" did not escape me. The implication that my success existed in a vacuum, completely separate from the family values he held so dear. "Thank you," I replied simply, letting the awkward silence hang in the air. My mother jumped in with frantic small talk about their flight, the weather, and how different Florida was from Colorado. I responded politely, but I didn't help her carry on the conversation. I was no longer responsible for managing their comfort. Finally, after our food arrived, my father cleared his throat, the way he always did before delivering a lecture. "About what happened at my birthday dinner," he began. "Things got a bit heated." I met his gaze directly, my expression unreadable. "You called me uneducated trash and a lowlife," I stated calmly, quoting his own words back to him. There was no anger in my voice, just a fact. "You told me to get out of your house. You said my money didn't make me part of the family. Then, you told Mr. Peterson at the bank that my company was a lucky bubble and that I was an unqualified risk. We need to start there." His face flushed a deep red. My mother looked horrified that I knew about the bank. "I was surprised by the news about your business," he stammered, deflecting. "It caught me off guard. I may have overreacted." An excuse, not an apology. I need to understand, I continued, maintaining steady eye contact. Was your reaction about me sharing my success? Or was it about learning I had been helping the family financially? Both, my mother interjected, finding her voice. It felt like you were showing off, like you were saying, "You're better than us now because you have money." I never said that. I never even thought that, I replied, my voice still even. I spent years hiding my success to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. I helped financially because I could, and because I wanted to support the family I loved. A family that called me trash for doing so. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, the way you presented it was very forward. And finding out you were behind all those other things, it felt like charity we never asked for. The conversation continued in this circular, frustrating vein throughout lunch. There was no genuine apology, only justifications, excuses. They attempted to minimize the severity of what they had done. The subtext was painfully clear. They were here because my public success had made rejecting me socially awkward, not because they had fundamentally reconsidered their assessment of my worth. As we finished the meal, I made a decision. For the first time in my entire life, I didn't back down. I didn't try to smooth things over. I chose myself. I would like to show you my home, I said, my voice ringing with a new authority. But first, I need to be very clear about something. I will not pretend the dinner never happened. I will not accept being called names or having my life's work denigrated. My relationship with you moving forward, if there is to be one, has to be based on mutual respect. That is not negotiable. For the first time, I didn't back down. I chose my own dignity over their comfort. This was a massive turning point. If you support this powerful decision, drop a emoji in the comments to send some strength her way on this journey. My parents exchanged a look. It was a look I had never seen before, one where they realized they had no power. My father, after a long moment, gave a stiff, reluctant nod. That seems reasonable, he mumbled. The conversation that followed their tour of the house was difficult, but necessary. As I showed them through the rooms, pointing out the handcrafted items from true North goods artisans, I realized something profound. Their approval, the thing I had sought so desperately for so long, no longer held the same power. I was proud of this home. I was proud of the business that made it possible. And I was proud of the woman I had become, not despite my path, but because of it. Their reaction no longer defined my reality. This newfound strength allowed me to build the life I truly wanted, surrounded by people who actually saw me. My friend Eliza became my anchor, a constant source of unconditional support. My executive team at True North Goods rallied around me, their professional respect a balm to my bruised soul. I adopted a rescue dog, a scruffy mixed breed I named Charlie, whose uncomplicated affection was a daily reminder of how relationships should feel. Simple, honest, joyful. I started the Amanda Wilson Entrepreneurship Scholarship at the community college I had briefly attended. The criteria had nothing to do with grades and everything to do with demonstrated initiative and creative problem-solving. These people, my friends, my team, the students I would eventually mentor, even my dog, they became my family. A family I had chosen. A family built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine connection, not on obligation or outdated expectations. They were the proof that sometimes the family we create is far more important than the one we were born into. 1 year after my move to Florida, I hosted a dinner party for my new friends. My chosen family. As we gathered on the deck, watching dolphins play in the sunset waves, I looked around at the faces surrounding me. Eliza, my mentor. Eleanor, my core team from work, who had flown in for a strategy retreat, and a few other local friends I had made. The air was filled with laughter and intelligent conversation, There was no judgment here, no hidden agendas, no fight for approval, just a genuine connection. And in that moment, I realized how completely my life had transformed from that painful night at my parents' house. To chosen family, Eliza toasted, raising her glass, and to having the courage to prioritize respect over obligation. The sentiment captured exactly what this journey had taught me. The healing process was far from over, but significant steps had been taken. My relationship with my parents, it continues to evolve. After their visit, we maintained limited contact. Brief, weekly phone calls that were initially awkward but have gradually become less so. There's an unspoken understanding, a fragile truce. They know my boundaries are firm, and they haven't crossed them again. I don't know if my father will ever truly understand the depth of the hurt he caused, or the damage he did. But I've accepted that. I've accepted that his validation is something I no longer need. My relationship with my siblings evolved differently. 6 months after my move, I received a long, heartfelt letter from my sister, Jessica. She apologized. A real, genuine apology, not just for her own actions, but for her role in enabling the toxic family dynamics for years. She admitted that my success had made her feel insecure and that she had been jealous. It was an honest, painful admission, and it was the first step toward rebuilding our connection, this time on a foundation of adult friendship rather than childhood patterns. We talk occasionally now, slowly, carefully, building something new. Mark, however, remains distant. I've heard through Jessica that without my financial safety net, he's had to face the real world for the first time. He had to sell the house I helped him buy, and is working 2 jobs to make ends meet. He has never reached out. He has never apologized, and I've made peace with the fact that he probably never will. My own healing journey has continued with regular therapy. Dr. Richardson helped me recognize how the trauma I endured had shaped my approach to everything, creating patterns of seeking validation through achievement and financial generosity. Success is not a substitute for self-worth, she reminded me in one of our sessions, and family approval cannot be purchased no matter how much you give. This insight was liberating. It led me to establish clearer boundaries in all my relationships, to become more comfortable discussing my accomplishments without minimizing them, and to give from a place of genuine generosity, rather than as an attempt to buy acceptance. True North Goods has thrived. So much so that I implemented flexible work policies for all my employees, allowing them to work from anywhere for part of the year. Productivity has soared, and our employee satisfaction scores are at an all-time high. My entrepreneurship foundation is now my central focus of philanthropy. We've funded our first 5 students, and I've developed a mentorship program pairing successful entrepreneurs who, like me, took an unconventional path, with promising students facing similar challenges. Witnessing their growth, seeing their ideas come to life, it brings a satisfaction deeper than any family approval ever could. My story is still unfolding, as all of our stories are. I maintain my boundaries with compassionate firmness, accepting that complete understanding from my parents may never come, but refusing to compromise my self-worth in seeking it. If my experience offers any wisdom worth sharing, it is this. Your value is not determined by other people's perceptions, especially those clouded by their own outdated beliefs and insecurities. True forgiveness is not about forgetting or continuing to accept harmful treatment. It's an internal process of releasing your own anger and resentment, while still maintaining the boundaries that protect your well-being. And success, real success, isn't measured by a diploma on the wall or a number in a bank account. It's measured by the authentic life you build and the positive impact you create. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with the people you love? How did you navigate those painful but necessary conversations? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's create a community here where we can support each other And don't forget to like and subscribe, because my journey is far from over. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone. Thank you for listening.